Keanu Reeves stepped gracefully out of a sleek black limousine that had just pulled up outside JFK Airport. The afternoon sun glinted off the polished surface of the vehicle, casting a mirror-like reflection across the bustling terminal entrance. Dressed in his signature black suit, paired with perfectly tailored trousers and a crisp white shirt beneath, Keanu carried himself with a quiet dignity. His trademark sunglasses shielded his eyes, but his unmistakable presence needed no introduction. Almost instantly, murmurs spread through the crowd. Within moments, the murmurs turned into cheers. "Keanu! Keanu! Over here!" Voices shouted from every direction. Fans surged forward, phones raised high in the air, eager to capture even a fleeting glimpse of the Hollywood legend. Posters, photographs, and even books were held out in trembling hands, hopeful for his autograph. The arrival hall, which just seconds before had been nothing more than another busy airport entryway, suddenly transformed into a stage of flashing lights and excitement. Paparazzi cameras clicked furiously, the burst of flashes almost blinding as they illuminated Keanu's path like fireworks. Despite the frenzy, Keanu moved with calm composure. His suitcase rolled smoothly beside him, the soft hum of its wheels barely audible, against the roaring noise of fans shouting his name. He offered a small, humble smile, nodding at those lucky enough to meet his gaze. Every so often, he lifted a hand in acknowledgement, his gentle wave sending fans into fresh screams of adoration. He was no stranger to this kind of chaos, yet his modesty never failed to shine through. Unlike many celebrities, Keanu seemed genuinely touched by the devotion of the people who admired him. But beneath the surface of celebration, another presence stirred. Hidden in plain sight among the crowd, several stern-faced officers observed the scene carefully. Unlike the excited fans, their expressions carried no joy or awe. Their eyes followed Keanu with intensity, their hands resting near radios clipped to their belts. They exchanged silent nods, communicating without words, and positioned themselves strategically around the terminal entrance. While the fans saw their idol, the officers saw something different, something that had set off alarms in the security system just moments before. Unbeknownst to Keanu, his name had appeared on a red flag list connected to an ongoing international investigation. For the officers, this was no ordinary celebrity arrival. This was potentially a high-risk suspect stepping foot on American soil. The energy in the air grew thick, balanced on the edge of two worlds, one of adoration and celebration, the other of suspicion and impending confrontation. Keanu smiled softly as he pushed his suitcase forward, never knowing that the cheers surrounding him were about to be replaced by gasps. Inside the vast terminal of JFK Airport, the atmosphere was buzzing with its usual blend of hurried travelers, the rolling of suitcases and the faint voice of announcements echoing overhead. Keanu Reeves, still the quiet center of attention, moved with his familiar grace toward the VIP lounge. His black carry-on glided silently across the polished floor, each step of his leather shoes steady and unhurried. Though surrounded by chaos, he seemed almost detached, as if moving in a world of his own. As he passed through the corridor leading toward security clearance, a pair of TSA agents sat behind their glowing monitors. One of them, a young officer with sharp eyes, frowned suddenly. The screen in front of him flashed with bold red letters. Alert, flagged name, Keanu Charles Reeves. For a brief moment, the agent thought it was a mistake. Surely it couldn't be the Keanu Reeves. He glanced up, and his disbelief melted into shock when he spotted the actor himself, walking calmly through the terminal. Look at this," the agent muttered, nudging his partner. The second agent leaned in, eyes narrowing as he scanned the screen. The alert displayed travel logs, international flight data, and connections to a suspicious entry made under Keanu's name. The agents exchanged a look heavy with unspoken understanding. This wasn't a glitch, it was a directive. "Call it in," the second agent whispered under his breath, careful not to draw attention. He picked up the phone at his desk, speaking in low tones. "Possible high-profile suspect flagged at Terminal 3, requesting backup immediately." Around them, passengers moved about oblivious, dragging luggage, sipping coffee, and scanning their boarding passes. To them, it was just another busy day at JFK. But to the agents, the air suddenly felt electric, charged with a sense of urgency. Keanu continued forward, still polite as he nodded at passing travelers who recognized him. Yet beneath his calm exterior, he noticed something was off. His instincts, sharpened from years of navigating both Hollywood and real-life challenges, began to whisper to him. The subtle shift in body language, the way uniformed officers on the far end of the hall suddenly straightened their posture, the hushed conversations happening. Just a little too close, something was brewing. More officers appeared, blending into the crowd as if they were ordinary travelers. One adjusted his earpiece, another placed a hand on the holster of his sidearm, disguising the motion as a casual adjustment of his jacket. They moved into formation, spreading out quietly to box in the path ahead. The silence before the storm had settled over the terminal. Keanu Reeves, unknowingly walking into the center of it all, was only seconds away from a confrontation that would shock everyone watching. The wide glass windows of the departure hall glowed with the fading light of late afternoon as Keanu Reeves approached the boarding gate for his flight to Los Angeles. His gait was steady, suitcase rolling obediently behind him, and for a moment it seemed as though the earlier tension was nothing more than paranoia. The murmurs of fans had calmed, replaced by the soft hum of boarding announcements and the metallic clatter of luggage wheels across the polished floor. But then it happened. Out of nowhere, several American police officers emerged from the edges of the crowd. Their uniforms were crisp, their presence commanding, and their movements precise, as if the moment had been rehearsed a dozen times. They stepped directly into Keanu's path, forming a barrier that blocked his access to the gate. Travelers around them froze mid-stride, sensing instantly that something extraordinary was unfolding. "Mr. Reeves," one officer said, his voice firm but controlled, "we need to talk." The words cut through the air like a blade. For a heartbeat, silence gripped the hall, and then, as if on cue, the collective gasp of the crowd rippled outward. Phones rose instantly, screens glowing as dozens of cameras locked onto the scene. Paparazzi lenses clicked furiously, desperate to capture every angle of the shocking confrontation. Keanu didn't flinch. His posture remained relaxed, shoulders loose, head held high. He removed his sunglasses slowly, revealing eyes that carried both calmness and quiet steel. When he spoke, his deep, resonant voice was polite yet unshakably firm. "Of course, officer," he replied, each word deliberate. "What seems to be the problem?" The crowd reacted with a chorus of whispers. Some fans cried out in disbelief. This couldn't be real. Others shouted protests, defending the man they admired. "He's innocent!" one young woman screamed, clutching a poster of John Wick. Another traveler muttered, "It's Keanu Reeves! What could he possibly have done?" The officers, however, showed no sign of hesitation. Their eyes remained fixed on him, their formation unwavering. One officer reached toward his radio, murmuring codes that only his colleagues could understand. Another subtly shifted his stance, making sure the actor had no easy way to slip past. Keanu, meanwhile, exuded a quiet strength that only heightened the tension. There was no anger in his expression. It was almost surreal. Their hero, the epitome of grace under fire, was standing calmly in the face of what looked like a public arrest. Every camera in the hall captured the moment. Some would later describe it as cinematic, others as heartbreaking. But in that instant, as the officers prepared to take their next step and the crowd held its collective breath, one truth became clear. This was no ordinary scene at an airport. This was the beginning of a spectacle the world would not soon forget. Within moments, the officers close in, their expressions stern and unreadable. Cold metal cuffs click tightly around Keanu's wrists, and the sound echoes louder than it should in the crowded terminal. Gasps ripple through the air, followed by shouts of disbelief. "He's innocent!" One fan cries, her voice breaking with panic. Another holds up a phone, recording with trembling hands, the red light blinking as the surreal moment is captured for millions, to see online within minutes. The crowd surges closer, desperate to understand what they are witnessing. Airport security forms a wall, holding people back as the police tighten their formation around Keanu. Yet, despite the chaos, he remains still. His head bows slightly, his face calm, almost meditative, as though he has rehearsed this moment in his mind. The sharp humiliation of being restrained in public lingers in the air, but he does not resist. His dark eyes flicker briefly toward the crowd, a silent acknowledgement of their cries, before he lowers his gaze again. The long black coat he wears sways with each step, brushing against the polished tiles as the officers guide him forward. Flashing airport lights, bright as camera flashes, illuminate the scene, casting sharp reflections on the windows and floors. The sharp rhythm of boots and footsteps fills the silence between the shouts. In that instant, the entire terminal feels suspended, as though time itself is struggling to comprehend that this man, this actor, this cultural icon, could be led away like a criminal. Children cling to their parents, confused by the sudden tension. Some fans push forward, pleading, their words drowned out by the commanding voices of police. Step back. Clear the way! The authority in those shouts creates an uneasy division between the world of the onlookers and the silent dignity of the man being taken. Social media streams light up instantly, clips and comments spreading like wildfire. Hashtags begin forming in real time, while shocked passengers whisper theories and rumors. But at the center of it all, Keanu walks steadily, shoulders squared, refusing to break. He does not argue, does not curse, does not plead. Instead, his calm presence seems to absorb the chaos around him, as though he carries a private knowledge the rest cannot see. The air feels charged with contradiction, shame and admiration, confusion and loyalty. Every eye follows the black-clad figure as he disappears into the corridor beyond the gate, swallowed by a wall of uniforms and authority. For the fans left behind, the image will linger like an unresolved chord, a moment they will replay again and again, searching for meaning in the quiet. Resilience of a man walking through fire with his head bowed yet unbroken. The sterile brightness of the airport corridor contrasts sharply with the chaos left behind. Fluorescent lights hum faintly overhead, their cold glow reflecting off the pale walls. The officers maintain a tight circle around Keanu as they lead him away, their radios crackling with static. His hands, bound behind him, ache slightly from the metal cuffs, but he does not complain. Each step feels deliberate, as though he has accepted this strange fate, though his mind quietly searches for answers. Behind him, the muffled noise of the crowd fades into silence. All that remains is the rhythm of boots striking tile, echoing in the empty passageways. The stillness is broken when one officer finally speaks, his voice low but firm. "Mr. Reeves, we're taking you for questioning. Cooperate, and this will be easier." Keanu lifts his head, meeting the officer's gaze briefly. There is no anger in his expression, only a quiet dignity. "I've always cooperated," he replies softly, his voice carrying the same calm tone audiences have heard in his films. The officer doesn't respond, but for a fleeting moment, his stern expression falters. Through the next security door, they enter a restricted area. The fluorescent lighting gives way to a dimmer, utilitarian space, gray walls, locked doors, and the faint smell of disinfectant. Two agents from another department wait there, clipboards in hand, their eyes fixed on him as if measuring every detail. Cameras above track his movement, recording each second of the ordeal. As he is guided into a small holding room, Keanu notices the details: the scuffed table, the lone chair, the mirrored glass that conceals observers on the other side. It feels surreal, like stepping into the set of one of his films, except this time there is no script, no director calling cut. They remove the cuffs but keep their distance, watching his every move. He flexes his wrists slightly, rubbing the red marks the cuffs have left. His coat, draped across the chair, looks out of place in the sterile room, like a fragment of a life that does not belong here. Outside the walls of the room, the world is erupting. News outlets scramble to report the arrest, their headlines flashing across phones and televisions. Keanu Reeves detained at airport. Fans online flood platforms with disbelief, anger, and conspiracy theories. Some claim it is a mistake, others whisper of hidden forces at work. The entire globe begins to turn its gaze toward this windowless room. Inside, Keanu closes his eyes briefly, centering himself. He knows the cameras are watching, knows every expression will be judged. Yet he chooses silence. He breathes deeply, shoulders steady, embodying the same calm that has carried him through loss, heartbreak, and years of quiet resilience. Whatever storm awaits beyond this room, he will face it, without fear. The door to the holding room opens with a heavy metallic groan. Two agents step inside, carrying files tucked under their arms. One is tall, with sharp features and a clipped, authoritative voice. The other keeps his expression neutral, his pen poised over a notepad. Behind the mirrored glass, silhouettes shift faintly, observers watching every second. "Mr. Reeves," the tall agent begins, sliding a folder onto the table, "you understand why you're here?" Keanu studies him for a moment, then shakes his head slowly. "No," he answers evenly. His tone is calm, but the weight of the situation is undeniable. "No one has told me why I was detained." The agent flips open the folder, spreading photographs across the table. Grainy surveillance stills, bank records, and what look like shipping manifests. Keanu's brows knit, his gaze flickering over the documents. His face betrays nothing, though his mind races. None of this makes sense. "You've been connected to a series of international transactions," the agent continues, his voice cool, precise. "Unusual amounts of money moved through accounts linked to your name. Several of these transfers coincide with illegal shipments." Keanu lets out a breath, almost like a sigh. He leans back in his chair, the fluorescent light reflecting faintly off his black hair. "I don't know anything about that," he replies, his voice calm but firm. "You must have the wrong person." The second agent finally speaks, his voice softer. "We're not saying you're guilty, Mr. Reeves, but your identity is being used. Either you're involved, or someone wants the world to believe you are." Silence hangs heavy in the room. Beyond the mirrored glass, faint whispers can be heard, though the words are indistinguishable. Keanu lowers his eyes to the photographs again, as if searching for hidden answers in the smudged images. "Look," he says quietly, folding his hands together on the table. "I've spent my life making movies, helping people when I can. I don't know who's behind this, but if someone is using my name, then they're not just trying to hurt me. They're trying to hurt the people who believe in me." The tall agent narrows his eyes as though weighing the sincerity of his words. The second agent scribbles notes quickly, his expression unreadable. The mirrored glass flickers faintly as someone shifts on the other side. At that same moment, outside the airport, chaos grows. Crowds gather at the gates, waving signs, shouting in anger at the news of his arrest. Cameras flash. Journalists push microphones toward anyone who will speak. The world is dividing, some demanding his release, others suspicious of his silence. Inside the sterile room, Keanu remains steady. The storm may rage beyond the walls, but he sits like a man carved from stone, his calm defiance stronger than the accusations before him. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Stay tuned for the next upload.